we're seeing is a shrinking of the traditional, or what had become the traditional core financial model of the financial system organised around universal banks. And generally, many of those have shrunk and are continuing to shrink in a very significant way. And what we're seeing is the re-emergence of much more specialist financial institutions. In a number of areas, the global system itself is changing, not just the financial system. So we're seeing the re-emergence of nationalist and regional interests in a way which we hadn't seen for a very long period of time, really from the 80s onwards. And that will have its own effect on the way companies are organised as well as financial institutions are organised. But in the meantime, you know, the system remains endlessly inventive. So for every problem there is a specialist answer to it. The question is, can you join up the dots as a company and access the services you need at the right time in the right way? The way currency markets have evolved in the last 5 or 6 years is making some profound changes to the way capital is allocated. It's perhaps a bit dramatic to talk about currency wars, but it's a very real prospect, if not a reality at the moment. Countries generally are taking a much more insular and nationalistic approach, both to regulation as much as to politics. And this is adding, I think, significantly to the difficulties with which you can plan your global operations. Certain areas of the market, I think, have continued to evolve in a very positive way. I think the equity market for larger companies still functions very effectively. I think you can raise money for global operations from institutions who invest globally at the equity level. We're a very, very devolved group. There isn't a conglomerate holding company called Virgin. We're actually effectively a family office which owns the Virgin brand and owns interests in many companies around the world. So we make no attempt to account for ourselves as a conglomerate. And we try to keep things really as simple as we can, because we found out over the years that complexity is never your friend, it's almost always your enemy. So we focus on a couple of key things. One is we're absolutely relentless in our focus on the brand and what it's doing around the world, because that's the common feature of the companies in our network. And part of that is focusing on the people we employ, how we employ them, how we engage them, how we incentivize them around those. Those are probably the two central tasks we set ourselves. And the rest of it is really about simplicity. So we have one source of equity, our own equity, the family equity. We try and work with local partners. We think that to share risk and reward with people who are much more expert in particular areas, whether it's geography or industry, it makes a great deal of sense. And we try and keep our financial reporting very focused and uncluttered. It's more like, for us, it's more like a private equity model than an industrial company accounting model. Large companies or large groupings of companies defy the understanding of a single person. You can't expect to be the master of the detail across a very large network of business interests. But I think what you can do is you can encourage, and if you like, insist that in your management chain, the obligation on the people in the chain is to foster trust, upwards and downwards. And you need to do that. There are many different ways of doing it, but trying to avoid a culture of blame and retribution is extremely important. People hide things because they're basically afraid of the consequences. And so I think it's a key management skill to be able to interact with your reports and your colleagues in a way where they don't feel that pressure in a way which is ultimately destructive. So for us, when we make a new investment, it's absolutely central that we think we've chosen the right people with whom we think we can have those essential relationships of trust over time. And if we're uncertain about that, we won't invest. If we become uncertain about that during the course of an investment or of ownership, then we will always act. But in the end, there aren't any guarantees. It's just hard work all the time.